We need some tissue. Uh-oh.
Hey, man.
Okay.
Yeah. And I told him he be serious. He be serious, though.
Episode, y'all. Tighten up and in for the outro.
He be
3, 2, 1, Clay.
And welcome back to the Back Then When podcast. I'm your host, Clay Gregory. This is the Father's Day edition. I have a line of DC natives with me, and we're going to chop it up about fathers today.
Happy Father's Day, everybody. I'm Thax.
To all the good men out there taking care of their responsibilities, happy Father's Day to you. I'm E. Taylor.
Shout out to all my good fathers out there, Mustafa.
All right, so we're going to hop it off like this, like thinking about fathers in DC, what's a father that stands out to you? Somebody who represents the city and did their thing as a father.
To me, personally, the late, great Marion Barry.
Okay.
The mayor for life.
Mayor for life.
The father for life in my eyes.
Yeah. Who would you say, Eric?
I got a couple of them, but the one I'm going to choose is the one I kind of personally know, and that was the director of the No. 4 Boys Club in Southwest when I was growing up, named Mr. Willie Borden. Uh-huh. He was like a father figure to a lot of the young guys in the neighborhood, including myself, as well as everybody I grew up with.
Okay, all right,
I'm going to ride off of Eric, but I said it before. I say Pee Wee, Turkey Thicket.
Okay.
He raised a lot of good kids from the neighborhood, so he made sure we was all in there doing what we needed to do, staying off the street.
Can I give an honorable mention?
Yeah.
Honorable mention, John Thompson.
Okay.
John Thompson was
That's a
a
good one.
father figure for the city.
Yeah.
No question.
Who I thought about was Ham.
Oh,
Mark Too Sharp Johnson's father.
Mm-hmm.
So let me ask y'all this. So there's a difference between being a father and getting fathering, right? Mm-hmm. So, you know, a lot of people who grew up in our generation did not have fathers in the home, right? Mm-hmm. So they got fathering from somebody, you know. So the guys that you guys use, like how much of a benefit do you think that type of, you know, someone not even being in the household but just being around you can have on an individual?
Well, we grew up, you know, as you all know, in the era where the village was strong. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, we had parents, teachers, even the police officers in the neighborhood, they knew your parents.
Yeah.
And they was going to let you know. So the males in the community were like on point. Like, even if they were doing wrong, they made sure we went to school, studied, when we came out of school, if they was down the block and we had to walk through the block, they was telling you, hey, get in there and do your homework. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So you had a lot of them that were the big homies. Yeah. But as a father figure that I really connected to, and it began my work ethic. You know, Mayor Barry, just that 12, 13, 14, you know, he instilled that work ethic in us, and that was something that I look back in hindsight now, like I don't even know where I would be or how my brain would be formulated if he wouldn't have been there, you know, and my mother knew him personally, and, you know, he would come to the house and stuff like that, and just to check on us, you know, that was the father I knew at the time.
Yeah, Thank you for that. Eric, who gave you your father?
Like I said earlier, Mr. Willie Borden. Okay. I don't consider him a father figure personally to myself, but he was a father figure to the collective, to the community. Okay. Meaning that growing up in Southwest, there's a lot of things that kids can get into and did get into, and he was the one who tried to stir the ship straight, keep people out of trouble, give an alternative to street life with sports. You know what I'm saying? A little structured thing, coming to practice, going to the games. We went traveled out of town. Right. You know what I'm saying? So it was a community father, but not a personal father. But
you also had your father in your life, right?
Yeah, I had my dad in my life. Yeah, my dad in my life.
And how do you think that shaped the man that you are today?
It shaped me because, I hate to say it, but I was scared of my father, not in a negative way, but a respectful way. Meaning that you know, you step out of line, you gotta see him.
Yeah.
So that part of my father, the disciplinarian, you don't realize how important it is until you become a father yourself, and then you gotta son yourself, and you gotta discipline him and keep him in line, and so you revert back to the lessons you learned from your father. So you say, you know what? I had a situation. My father, I got disrespectful one time. Got out of line with my mom, And she called him up. He came over. My father and my mom were divorced. They were not together. And my father, he did two things, and it stuck with me for 56 years. I'm 56 years old. And the first thing he did was made me take out a dictionary and look at the word obedience and memorize it. So I had to look up obedience and memorize it. Then he took out the Bible and he said, look at the third thing, the third law of commandment, thou shalt respect thy father and thy mother. And I had to look at that and memorize it. Absolutely. And then the belt came. Wow. It was like, okay, I thought it was off. I was like, okay, I got to memorize stuff, we good. Yeah. But after that, the belt came. It was like enforcement, like you learn, now I'm going to show you enforcement, and then you put on punishment for a month. You can't go to the rec, can't go play ball, can't go outside with your friends. It was the father figure.
It was a different. It didn't take much when it came to the male figure.
That's
back
right.
then. You know what I mean?
Sometimes they just give you that look.
We wasn't playing with the homies out in the streets, and we wasn't playing with our fathers, especially if they, even though my father, he did spend time with me up until I was 12. He just disappeared after that. But that time that we did spend, I mean, I knew not to play with him. Yeah. You know what I mean? I wasn't a disrespectful kid anyway, to anybody. Yeah. Because it's, that was something serious back then. My mother made sure that I had good manners and things like that. But I knew not to play with my father. And he used to tell me, I cave your chest. I mean, I never forgot it. And he used to call me Slim. Right. His own son. So, what I mean? That's how long ago that was.
Dang, I get that, man. Thax, did you have your father in your life?
Yeah, I'm a piggyback off a lot, but I think my father, I did have a father. No, I had a dad. I don't think fathers and dads could use the same terms. Right. Me personally, so I'm looking at it like my father, my dad, he provided everything. I ain't gonna lie. He provided, we had a house, went to school, he did all that. He was like James Evans. Right. Of Good Times. Yeah. He was the stern one. He came in the house looking, he ain't had to say nothing, looking at you. It's over. We was like, oh man, here we go. But no, listen, a father, he wasn't there for the games. He didn't come to the school. He didn't do the stuff that my mother did. But see, he was the dad to me. He wasn't the father. He wasn't to spend the time, the positive times with you, talking to you. I ain't gonna lie, he had 3 jobs. He worked to provide. So he was a hell of a provider. I'm not taking, I gotta give him his props for that. But he just wasn't the father to sit down and talk to, like I do my sons now. You know what I'm saying? I learned from that. I learned.
Exactly.
I'm gonna talk to my sons. I'm a discipline them, but it's not gonna be the same type of discipline.
Yeah. I think the times of, the life and times of being a father, it evolves based off of the era that we were in. So, if Thax, you're a couple years older than me, so I suppose you're talking about like in the early 70s, right? Going back a generation before then, a father could have one job and provide for a whole family. That's just how the economy was then. And then it shifted and earnings started to go down. And so when that happened, then, many men needed more than one job. And even in some instances, the wife and the mother had to get into the workforce. So that impacted. So we being kids, we didn't see and understand what was happening in that instance.
Right. We wasn't going to understand that. You know what I mean? We just wanted what we want as a kid. It's all about you. You want what you want. If you want your father to do this, do that. Luckily, it was a different time where we were outside. We were really outside playing. So we had to, we took advantage of being on the basketball court or being in the rec center. Or being in outside playing football, throwback tackle, and stuff like that, you know what I mean? So we were busy, and my mother, I felt like my mother kind of overcompensated for my father not being there, and she would do stuff that mother wouldn't normally do. I felt like, and when I look back at it, I feel like it was a distraction, you know what I mean, for me to not be all down, because I never really brought up my father to her. Like, I didn't ask where is he and stuff like that, because I had my big homies outside, and I had the mentorship might have not been good at the time, but I did have mentorship, you know what I mean, from the homies on the block. You know what I mean? But
it's interesting, like with our culture, right? Being from DC, go-go music is, we grew up on it, right? It's part of like our DNA as far as like our community, and even going back to like middle school, elementary school, we used to go to go-go's even as at really young. Like Now it's in clubs. It's away from people. You know, young people can't do it. Did y'all fathers know that y'all would go to the go-go's back then when y'all was young like that?
Sneak out the house.
Sneak out the house. Oh, okay, come on.
My father could care
The
less.
first go-go I went to, I was at my dad's house in Maryland.
Wow,
Had
okay.
trouble at Rosecroft.
Okay.
And he lived in Fort Washington. He said, okay, you can go down there with your cousin, but you know, just know be home at a certain time.
Yeah.
I was 14. I didn't know how to stay out late anyway. You know what I'm saying? But that was the first time I went to a go-go.
Yeah, when he was still in my life, I was still too young. So he'd come get me on the weekend, and we'd go to, you remember the American Theater on Connecticut Avenue? They used to sell, they used to show Kung Fu movies all day long.
American Theater. The American Theater.
Where was
On
it at?
Connecticut Avenue.
Yeah.
It wasn't far from, how far was it from, it was a little further up Connecticut before you get to the circle.
Okay.
Before you get to that, what's that, the Chevy Chase Circle? I'm not sure what circle that is offhand. Don't quote me. But
Okay.
all day long.
Wow.
Kung
Okay.
Fu movies all day. And that's what...
With the words at the bottom.
Yeah. And that's what we used to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I
And that
remember
was,
that.
to me, that was the best thing in the world.
Yeah. So another thing that's kind of I think we should talk about in this component here is the myth of being fathers, right? So the myth is that, you know, black men are absent fathers, that we don't really, you know, we're too preoccupied with ourselves, too narcissistic to really be engaged in the lives of our children. But I got a couple statistics I want to share with y'all and get y'all opinions. So 70% of black fathers live with their children. Do y'all agree with that? That's a
tough.
fact, right? 78% of black fathers eat meals with their children daily versus white fathers, 74%. Another one, 41% of black fathers help with homework daily versus white fathers, 28%.
That's tough.
And lastly, 70% of fathers bathe, dress, or help change their children daily. 70%.
I love the
That's a lot
numbers.
for that one,
Yeah, I
cause
love the numbers.
Yeah, I ain't doing that.
Oh, go ahead, man.
ain't
You
doing
change the
that.
diapers, man. Come on,
Yeah,
bro.
we all did that.
I did.
I'm trying to tell you.
Me
son.
too.
I'm changing diapers
Well, I mean,
now.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, I got a new youngest. Yeah, I got a 6-month-old.
right.
Yeah.
So I started over. 24. I got a 24-year-old, a 20-year-old, and then I started over. And I was telling my homie, I was like, you know, I'm thinking I'm starting over. You know, you go somewhere, we was having drinks and some cigars. I was like, I think I'm starting over. And he was like, man, you crazy. You gonna actually try to start over? I was like, I think I'm gonna do that. But that's because, I mean, fatherhood, I can travel, I can go hang out, I can try to do all the slick, cool stuff, like the empty nester stuff. But the thing that matters the most to me is family.
That's right.
You know,
That's the most
so
important thing, brother.
I don't care about anything else.
Yeah.
They don't
That's
glorify that enough, because we do have a
course not.
lot of good men that are good fathers, but we
Yeah.
always get the stereotype of like black men this. Man, stop it. My neighborhood I grew up in, I'm not lying to you, bro. Out of 20 households, 17 fathers was around in the 70s and 80s when I grew up. And guess what? As soon as the father rode out the household, everything went to chaos in the house.
You know, specifically in D.C. especially, you know, we had, it's reasons for, you know, those broken households. You know, when that welfare system kicked in and, you know, the single mother, the mothers couldn't have a man in the house if you wanted to get
Certain
those,
things.
you know, benefits,
Yeah.
you know, and things like that. Then come behind that later on, we had the crack epidemic. Then becomes the mass incarceration. So many males going to jail, and you know, during that time, and you know, they got young children, just had babies and stuff like that. These kids growing up, and you know, they got to go see their father in the cell. You know what I mean? So it was a mess. You know what I mean? It was hard. We still recovering from those effects. So yeah, the village was broken up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you know, the police, even the good officer friendlies, the police
Officer
we had
friendly.
in the neighborhood, they were dismantled. Then we started, you know, DC started hiring, recruits. They started recruiting from other cities and states. You know, people that didn't really understand the dynamic of DC.
Yeah.
You know, they didn't care. So they, you know, you get in trouble, you getting in trouble.
Right.
You going to jail. So instead of that second chance of an officer actually telling you to get in the house.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
One thing about growing up in D.C., basically my whole neighborhood was single black mothers. Every friend I had lived with their mothers. Nobody's father was there. Not just saying they was all incarcerated, but they just weren't there. And that dynamic played a role in how a lot of young black men in the city grew up, because a lot of these moms had good government jobs. They had good government jobs, so they could support the family, and that dynamic changed where a father was not as necessary financially as it was, to be physical there. So your mother's kind of took the reins when you was growing up and provided more so, and young men who didn't have their fathers in life kind of got sidetracked. And I think that was a reason why a lot of things went down the way they went down in the early 80s in D.C. because, like I said, a lot of brothers come from single-family homes with their mothers.
You grew up around Southwest. Are you talking about households that were near, like, the taller apartment buildings, or are you talking about households that were more towards the public housing side?
All of them. Okay. Even on, it's two sides of Southwest.
Okay.
You got the condos, apartment side, and
Right.
then you got the low income project side.
Okay.
And it was no different. My friends the friends on the condo side, father wasn't there.
Yeah.
Friends on the other side, father wasn't there. Nobody had their fathers in the house. I don't care what side you was on. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's where a guy like Mr. Borden came in. Remember I was talking about Mr. Borden earlier?
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
a person like that came in. He became the perennial father for all the kids, no matter what side you was from in Southwest.
Yeah.
Nobody father was there, so
Yeah.
it didn't really matter. It wasn't an income disparity. It was more of a just, fathers went there. Some went to, in the military. Some were incarcerated. Some just didn't live in state. It was just different. Some were just divorced and lived in Maryland. A lot of fathers like that.
Yeah.
They divorced and the mom, they don't get along. They live in Maryland. So y'all know how them weekends are. You wake up, you go to your father's house out in Maryland for the weekend.
Or he come get you.
Yep,
Piggybacking
yep.
off what Eric was saying, it becomes a thing where, all right, my father was coming to get me on the weekends, and he stopped coming, and then I started becoming bitter. Personally, my mother didn't bash my father at all. Right. You know what I mean? And growing up, it's like, now in hindsight, I think about, because my mother wasn't paying attention.
Yeah.
Really, she was too busy. She was working to keep a roof over our head. You know what I mean? So I was doing stuff I know I was getting away with that I wouldn't have did if my father was when I look back at it now.
Yeah.
And so you grow up, you go through those years, and I became angry that I didn't have my father, because I look back, I'm like, damn, there was so much I could have been doing if I know he would have been able to stay on me that my mother wouldn't understand. Even when I went to start boxing, my mother couldn't stand it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And she would let me know, and I would feel a certain type of way because I didn't want to respect her, so I didn't want to keep going to box.
Right.
And she didn't want me to box, but I know if I had my father in my life, he would have been like, man, hey, look, he going to do this and do that, whatever. But, and it brings me to a point where recently, I lost my mother and my father recently. So my mother, when she got sick, she was in a facility over there off of 16th Street, Northwest. And my mother, I was going back and forth to see her. And my wife, we were leaving one day, and my wife saw this man walking down the hallway. And she looked at me, she said, "That's your father." I hadn't seen him in like 40 years.
Wow.
She said, "That's your father." And I didn't look at him. I was in denial. I was like, whatever. Whether it was him or
she
not, I didn't
recognized,
care.
she saw his face,
she said,
and
"That's
then
your
saw
father."
your face, and was like, that's your
That's
father.
tough.
And
That's
I ain't
what's
even
up.
look at him.
Wow.
So we left that day.
Yeah.
I ain't think about it no more. She ain't say nothing else. I didn't question her. She didn't question me. Then we come back maybe the next week.
Yeah.
And the people in the facility said, we have something that we want to let you know, because they recognized the last name. And they said we can't tell you too much. And my wife cut them off, said, his father in this facility.
Wow.
And that's when I said, you know what? I have to accept it.
Wow.
So it is.
Did y'all speak after that?
Oh, I went up to see him.
Yeah.
That's
What was that like?
And I let go.
What was
I
that
let
like
that
for you,
anger-
seeing him?
Listen, it was a load off,
Yeah.
and I said, I'm looking at this man that used to be strong as bricks,
Yeah.
fragile old man.
Yeah.
Some dementia had started kicking in. He was an escape artist, so he kept trying to escape. So, I was laughing. I saw my personality in him, even in that state.
Yeah.
And I was like, it answered some of the things about my personality.
Wow.
You know what I mean? So I forgave him.
So literally, I mean, I think, one, all of us are fathers. And all of us have been active.
Some are
in the
grandfathers.
Hey, we're going to get into that, because that's an important conversation there.
Me neither.
Yeah, but the fact is that all of us are fathers. All of us have been active in the lives of our children. All of us have put our children before we put ourselves. You know what I'm saying? So, like, we are the shining example of the break of the myth. But here's a question I was going to ask you guys. When we think of our fathers in that generation, right, the task was, what was expected for a father to do? Like you said, that your father was a provider, and a lot of the people thought that what a father was good for was providing, but not much more. Like, you know, I think even now that it's kind of almost like a modern concept that a father takes their kid to Little League and all of those things, right? So like, what do you think has been the shift in consciousness of fathers now compared to that other generation where maybe they only thought that all they needed to do was, you know, put bread on the table?
For me personally, I see my father, I grew up with my father as being the disciplinarian. He was the disciplinarian, and yeah, I got hit with the belt, I got beat, but I've never spanked my own son. I've never put hands on my own son. So I think that was the difference between how I grew up and how I brought up my son. I've scolded him, but I've never touched him. My father.
That's interesting. Me neither. I never spanked my kids. I never had to. I never.
But were you spanked?
I was spanked. Yeah.
Right. We were spanked.
Yeah.
I was punished and spanked.
Well,
I don't even want to call what I was called. I got the switch.
I'm a spanker. I don't play that shit.
I got the switch.
You know, hey, look.
And I've only spanked my son
But
once.
you know what?
Okay. Huh.
I learned that this shit don't work anyway.
No.
Okay.
You know, but
With the spanking?
it's a temporary fix. It makes me feel good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
So,
that's
like,
the
it made me
backlash
feel
that we
good.
have.
Yeah.
But
From our
it
parents.
doesn't work. You know what I
Okay.
mean? It really doesn't work, especially when they get older. They're gonna look at you. My son a boxer,
Okay.
so he gonna look at me like I'm crazy if I bring a belt towards him
Okay.
or something. You know what I mean? He gonna put his hands up. You know, who knows? But nah, it's overall in hindsight, definitely not a spank.
Okay. So really what we're talking about, and these statistics that I read demonstrate that it's a myth that black fathers are not engaged in their children, right?
Nah, yeah.
We agree with that, right?
Absolutely.
And the fact that all four of us are active fathers.
And it's a lot of things against us. Number one, the court system. Don't get caught up in that. Man, listen, that court system is totally against me.
Yeah.
Totally. I'm
Agreed,
sorry.
100%.
I'm
We
sorry.
I can
It's been
attest to
proven.
that one.
Yeah.
You know,
It's been proven. Don't get caught up in it if you can't.
I can attest.
It's on you, man.
Oh. I guess the question is, well, who was your favorite TV father?
Oh man, now you're getting deep, because I thought about that when we were talking about the disciplinarians, right?
Right.
And growing up, you know, you come home from school, you have a little snack, you know,
Turn on channel 20.
turn on channel 20,
Channel 20.
and who you had? You had
Rabbit
Good Times, and you had Jeffersons, right? And so both of those fathers was alpha males. They was, you know, they were my way or the highway. You know, they were providers, but there really wasn't much bend in them, right? So I grew up thinking, okay, that's like what a
It's supposed to
father.
be like.
And although my father wasn't that way, so I really kind of was balanced out with that. But the prototypical dad, you know, I think in that generation for us was like James Evans with his angry
Fred
self.
Sanford.
No nonsense.
Fred Sanford, his crutchy
Angry black
complexion.
man.
Yeah, oh my God.
That's funny, right?
Yeah.
They always had us
Fred Sanford was lunch.
watching those shows.
And you know what's
Fred.
funny when you think about the old shows, like What's Happening?
Yeah.
Remember Roger and Dee's
Yeah.
father was out of the house.
Sure was,
But he
yeah.
would show up
Yeah.
when he felt like he needed something. You know, he
Yeah.
was trying to use. So, you know, we saw that too.
Yeah.
You know, and I love one. That was one of my favorite shows back there too.
Yeah, who else would y'all say? What are some other TV fathers?
I looked at TV in the 70s, so it got to be 70 TV shows. I mean, we can go back to Mr. Brady.
Okay.
On the Brady
Nah,
Bunch.
see, that's what I was about to talk about. See, it's a difference when we used to watch shows in '70s because we got older and we can think about it.
Right. Yeah.
So the Brady Bunch had the house, the steps, the garages, but the
Six
Good Times
kids.
was in the high rise.
the
You know what I'm
project.
saying?
Right,
Father
right.
Knows
You know what I
Best and all these
Well,
shows.
those old shows, those fathers were like way
crazy.
more calm. They were way more like if you think about My Three Sons,
Oh, I didn't watch that.
you know, like Brady,
Family Affair.
Leave it to Beaver.
Leave It to Beaver. Yeah, all of those shows, the dads were real calm and relaxed.
Because their society was different than
But
what
they was
we
also
used
white.
to.
Yeah, they was
Exactly.
white.
But
Yeah.
even with John Amos' situation, rest in peace,
Yeah.
he wasn't going to do some things that they wanted him to do.
Oh, yeah. No selling
and
out.
neither did Florida. You know, his wife, she was like, nah, and she advocated because I believe initially, could be wrong, but I don't believe they were gonna have a.
That's what
Like
they say.
father
She
now,
said
she
she fought
asked
to
me.
have
She
a
did.
father
She
in the
did.
household.
And
She
it
sure
turned
did.
out to be James Evans. I was like,
Yeah, that was a.
And he was
mean
younger than her in
Yeah,
real life.
yeah.
like by 20 years or
A
something.
long, he was definitely.
Yeah.
Esther Rowe was
Esther
way
Rowe, yeah.
older than him.
Yeah.
JJ and the father was the same age almost.
Almost there. Like a
But the
10
good thing about
10
James
years.
Evans, even though he was an angry black father, it was always a lesson at the end of everything.
Yes.
At the end of everything, like I remember when JJ tried to join the gang. Remember when JJ
Yep.
tried to
Oh,
join
man.
the gang with the dude at the
he
Air
came
Force?
on down there.
Yeah,
And he got
it was
shot.
always a lesson, right? It
Something
was
like
always
that.
a lesson to be learned with James Evans.
So, like, we're talking about James Evans and George Jefferson. You know, you're talking about an alpha male. You're looking at a
successful man. George Evans was successful.
he was successful, right? But they were like A-type personalities. They don't play like they highway, my way or the highway. What type of impact do you think that had on our community? Like those portrayals of fathers.
It built, in my opinion, it built a stronger. It did it helped to build a stronger community. I mean, it gave us some accountability. You know what I mean? Versus now, fathers, we are in we have a competition with more of a competition with certain peers and their sons' peers and the social media.
Social media, bro.
Social media era is, I mean, it's a no-win,
Right.
in my opinion. And it's like, all we can do is try to pay more attention and make sure they not going that route where they see, you know, it's all over the place versus just in our community. Now it's like they looking at and being influenced by different places around the world because of the access.
Social media has almost become the parents.
Yeah,
In a lot of instances.
Yeah, absolutely. So
But
make it
going,
more difficult.
staying with this theme of the evolution of the black father on TV, right? Because this was this raised a whole generation of folks, like the image that we had of a father. So, you know, we say Fred Sanford, George Jefferson, James Evans. That was the 70s, right?
Cliff Huxtable.
Okay, that's what I was gonna say. I was gonna
leave
get
it.
into like the 80s and 90s, right? So then you had Cliff Huxtable.
We segued from James Evans to Cliff Huxtable, bro.
Yeah.
That was my maturation. James Evans is what I started with.
Yeah.
Cliff Huxtable is what I ended
And
with.
then with your
Yeah,
guy from Will Smith, Fresh Prince of
Fresh
Bel-Air.
Prince of Bel-Air.
Uncle
Yeah.
Phil.
And
I remember
their
Phil,
fathering
too.
styles, although they were strong men in the household, but they seem to come off a little bit more accommodating, a little bit more
But that's because
later-
they
the
made
later
emotionally
fathers-
They was more
intelligent,
successful
right?
too.
The later
That
fathers.
has a lot to do with
James wasn't successful.
You know
We
what I
all
mean?
know that.
And he didn't want, James wanted better for his kids, especially. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And you remember that episode where JJ did that painting
Yeah.
Yeah.
in the
Oh,
bank?
yeah. And he
Didn't
was
wanna
not
pay
having
for it.
James is about to bust him up.
But you know that
Bag 'em up.
I'm gonna challenge Thax on something because he you know, and I just want you to clarify it. I better that you said that based off of that James Evans wasn't successful, and I just want to see whether or not you guys agree with that. And then I don't know whether or not you want to clarify because I would even I would venture back to say that he was successful.
Yeah.
Just financially, you know, he didn't get his family out of the projects. But as far as being a father, you know, what does it mean to be successful
He
as a
got
father?
up every day. Well, to
James
let
was a
them-
hell of a father.
Yeah, and
But I mean, successful meaning like the show, the Cosby Show. They lived in a
Brownstone.
4,000 square foot home.
Right.
The Uncle Phil, they had a mansion in Hollywood. I mean, I'm just saying it like that. James was a hell of a father.
Yeah, he's a
That was
hell of
my
a
he got
father.
up every day.
Just, man, he
went-
was
hey,
tough.
He worked at that
He don't get no
car
bigger
wash.
than him.
Remember what you said though?
But the
earlier?
calmness, what you said calm, is because James it was more of a struggle.
Right.
He was growing up Cabrini Green projects.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no
That's
question.
what I mean by that.
Yeah, but this is an important part because you know I think that this is one of the issues that some fathers have.
Right.
Is that if I'm not financially in the right place, then I cannot be
I see where you're going.
a successful father.
Yeah,
and that's the furthest thing from the truth. There's some statistics around here that talk about single father households, right? So. 1.1 million black single father households in the country. 1.1 million single father black hole.
That's the father and the child only.
Just a single father.
And then keep reading
You
what
know,
it says.
and of course, I would think that the vast majority of them are
I
not
had no
living
clue.
in a
Look at
Cliff
that stat there.
Huxtable house, right?
Yeah.
So, the fact is that would we consider those fathers successful?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Because
Absolutely.
nothing beats time spending with
You
your
know,
family.
and they
Time is
deserve.
That's what
the
James
same-
gave.
they-
Not even
He
money,
had
it's time. We know.
James gave that time up.
Oh,
They
did he?
deserve the same respect and
Damn right.
credibility as a single mother, a single father. Doing that's not easy,
Yeah.
especially in this day and time.
Yeah,
You know what I
exactly.
mean?
One of the things you see if you watch like a lot of the NFL and NBA draft lotteries, a lot of times one of the people you see up there is that dad.
No
Yep.
question. No question.
Like the difference between a child, being successful, oftentimes has to do with whether or not there's a father figure in the child's life.
Most definitely.
Yep. And back then, think about it.
Back
Those
then,
stories that
You always
were,
got to throw that
you
one
know,
in
that
there.
had the father in the household were written by Norman Lear and
Yep.
people that didn't
Yep.
look like us. But now, it's the important. We see the importance of us
Yeah.
doing our own stories.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And we can really dig deep in the places that they don't. We are
That's
really
right.
coming from our own experience. You know what I mean?
Tyler Perry.
Exactly.
Tyler Perry.
That,
You know what
with
I
that
mean?
father going to court with his kids.
It's a funny thing, man. I remember when the Cosby Show came out, right? It was the #1 show, like
in the
5 years in a row.
in the country.
In the country, and it was all predicated on this fact that, like, here you had a successful black family, mother, father, kids, just
In
being able to
college.
be kids.
Yeah,
Not having to deal with a whole bunch of things that one might even. Some people thought that it was a little bit sanitized because it seemed like it was. They didn't have to deal with like all of the same black experience. But truth be told, the household that I grew up in, it was identical to that.
Yeah,
My father was educated.
Cosby
my mother was
Clay.
educated, my
I was
mother-
about to say that.
Clay.
man.
I had a Cosby type of lifestyle growing up
I was
myself.
about to say that.
Yeah,
Think
Thax
about
used to come to the
I
house.
used to come over there.
being
man.
able to show those intimate relationships, like this new show. I haven't watched it honestly, but I keep hearing about it. It's with Wood Harris and his son.
Oh, yeah,
You
yeah,
might know
yeah.
that- I don't know the name
On,
of it.
on, you talking about on Netflix?
I think it's on
Forever?
Netflix.
I think it's called Forever.
Something like
Yeah.
that. Oh my goodness! I mean, I'm hearing rave reviews on it, and it shows like this really intimate relationship. You know how we are with sons. Some might not want to talk to them about everything.
Right.
Like to come, and he should be able to come to his father and talk about those things. So that I advise all of us to try to check that show out because it's one of the newest platforms where somebody is actually showing an intimate relationship with their father and son.
And I want to give a shout out to one father we failed to mention that was a very positive role model when we saw the movie. Boys in the Hood. The father's name was Furious
we talked
Styles.
about
Yeah.
Furious Styles.
That was a thorough dude
Jiggling
right
the
there.
balls while
What about
he
my man from
let me out the car.
the one that went to prison and came back and his son was
South Central.
South Central.
Yeah,
South
Central.
Yes.
Thorough-
I'm
thorough
telling
dude.
you,
Toughest
because it
father I've
showed
seen in
so
him.
many transitions.
Yeah.
You know
But
what I
we
mean?
we got a good show going on here, guys.
Yeah, no
we
question.
got to keep moving on
Yeah,
to the
that's
next
right.
segment of it.
Happy Father's Day, fellas.
Hey.
Yeah,
Father's
yeah.
Day.
So I think it's as far as being black men, and most of our families came up from the South, right? Our grandparents or somewhere in the line, right? We have to talk about the fact that many of our families came out of slavery, and the effect that had on fathers, on our ability to be fathers. And I'm gonna drop a big word: epigenetics. Okay.
Can you spell that?
I'm
what-
gonna get my dictionary
I
out
know
to spell
genetic-
that.
I heard
I
genetics.
probably can spell it, but why don't you break it down
epigenetics.
for us so we can
Yeah.
get the understanding of that?
It just really boils down to the fact that trauma can turn on and off elements of our genes. And so if you think about the experience that many black men had as far as being fathers during slavery, where you didn't have a right to your children, then as a survival mechanism, you had to turn off something that was natural. Like it's a natural instinct for black men or any other mammal in general to look for and care for their children. We were forced to not be able to have the ability to have those strong bonds with our children.
keep the
So
household.
many in our community had to turn off that connection that we had with our children, right? And so that's still a part of the legacy, and we still see it play out today.
It's traumatic. It's still in our DNA.
Yeah.
It's trauma, and we have to be able to overcome it. It takes certain practice, and we don't seek therapy. as much. So, you know what I mean? Which we'll discuss later, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But, I believe that, you know, the effects, and that's why I say when we talk to each other, it helps more.
Yeah.
You know, versus, you know, you honestly can't talk to, you can, but you're not going to get what you need from, you know, a woman or your significant other when it comes to something like that all the time. You know, we need to bounce off. You might learn something from a male that's been through the same thing or that's feeling the same way or going through the same thing. But
That what we talked about grandfathers, like these numbers, like we know we come from the South. Most, I don't care who you are, if you're black in America, everybody came from the South. We migrate up to the North. Just imagine though not being able to take care of your kids because they took you out the household. Yeah. And that's not supposed to have some effect on us now that happened those years and through evolution. You know what I'm saying?
That's right.
That's man, I couldn't even think about coming to take me from my kids.
Yeah.
Oh.
If you want to see some heartbreaking stuff, go back and listen to them stories and narratives of that stuff. Like, there's a reason why, you know, we don't teach it to our children, some of the stories from what those experiences were, you know. Because the thing is, with healing, you do, it's just like a knee injury, right? If I'm an athlete, if I injured my knee, the intention is for me to continue to get back to a point where I can play without remembering that part, right?
Right.
So for us to heal, we do have to let go of that past.
Definitely.
But we also have to, in today and now, we have to see that those fathers that need support, or even some of the cats that we know who are not in the lives of their children, like, it's not the fact that they're just being dismissive or like they, you know, they just don't care.
Right.
But some of this is still a part of their makeup.
And that's why I say you can't be mad about what has happened with us as a whole, as a black culture. Because a man been through a lot, right? We talk, this is Father's Day. We talking about the black man. A man has been a lot that is taken out of his family. So we look at our fathers, we mad at our fathers, but we don't know what he was going through with his job, his wife, you know what I'm saying? It struggles. I'm coming home, I'm bringing this bread, but somebody's complaining to me about this and that.
Especially this generation.
We don't know, so we can't be mad at our fathers. We have to forgive them so we don't do that to our kids.
That's right.
You feel what I'm saying?
That's right.
Yeah, our fathers came up in the 60s, so you know how it was in the 60s before during civil rights. Yeah, it was
way tougher.
We've had it way easier.
Way easier. And our kids.
And our kids got it way
easier.
And they're supposed to be speaking up.
Please.
Yeah, it's supposed to get easier per generation.
Some of our kids, like my son was born at a time where we had a black president.
Ooh, that's
all of
You understand what I'm saying? So they don't know no better. They think we supposed to have, we can get a black president.
Exactly.
But we know the struggle all these decades, and we didn't. You know how hard that was. So like, he's a father of two daughters. You know what I mean? So that's a great representation.
You got dad girls, with the
You
girl
know what I
dads,
mean?
my bad.
Yeah,
So that's relevant now. You know what I'm
what I
saying?
mean?
Fathers taking care of their daughters, man. We tough, man. We gotta pat ourselves.
We do this thing.
We gotta pat ourselves,
and we need that
man.
sometimes.
We do
You know
need
what I
it,
mean?
man.
That's why when Father's Day comes around, you know, we still dealing with this thing with the difference between Mother's Day and Father's Day.
Oh,
You
my
know what I mean?
goodness.
It's a major difference in society.
I get a text.
We don't get the dinner and the travel and going out.
Get the text. Happy Father's Day. Heart.
Absolutely.
But there's something else I want to bend this conversation into a piece because I think this is really important. Okay, and I'm gonna lead with a question. Okay, and that is thinking about what our children need. How much fathering, like to what age do you think is the optimal amount of fathering that a child needs to be balanced and successful, healthy? Like the optimal age of fathering. Like give it a number. Like do you think 18, 21, 30, what would you say that the age is?
From what I know, our brains, males, our brains aren't even developed into like the mid-20s.
Please.
Yeah.
But when I feel like, you know, my son has to learn, like, at some things he has to learn on his own.
Yeah.
So, like, that 21 age, between that 19, 21, not 18, of course. I mean, the society says 18, do this, do that. Nah, they still 16 for real.
Yeah.
In the brain, you know what I mean? Maybe younger.
Yeah.
But they are able to drive. At 16, they start getting their license. They start, you know, you got to let them grow into that, make some mistakes, you know what I mean? But that between 21, at that 21 age, I believe that, we become advisors.
Okay, what you think, Eric?
I got examples. Like, my son right now is, his birthday next week, he'll be 2006. What do I make him?
19.
Yeah, no.
2006?
No, 2002, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so he's 20-something, 23,
Okay.
24. But even to this day, we talk, and the conversations are much better than the conversation we had when he was 17, 18.
Yeah.
I hate to say it, but at that age, I believe he was still a mama's boy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And the things that happened during that time was he graduated, he went into the Air Force, became a mature young man, and he had a child of his own, a son, my grandson.
Yeah.
And so that right there gave him a whole different
Make a big
perspective to be able to
difference
look at the lens through the father's eyes versus what he saw growing up. He only saw it through his mother's eyes. But now as a father, he understands. You know what I'm saying? He understands the things that father had to go through because he's not on with his son. He's on the base in Louisiana. So he understands the absent father, but the financially responsible father, and how kids grow up not knowing that, father's kicking his money over here, but they don't see that. They only see that my dad's not here.
Right.
So as a father, he understands that, I made all the football games and all that other stuff, but it's much better understanding with him now that he's a father of his own. So our understanding with each other is great now.
All right. What age would you say?
We all know, you be a father your whole life. They could be
Oh,
40,
the whole-
30.
No
It's
question.
stuff you can look at and be like, he's still a kid. But I'm going to say, once a young man goes to school, if he goes away to school, I think he becomes more mature because he's on his own.
Yeah.
But I'd probably say 25.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So let me just point out a couple people, and then we're gonna bend this segue. Okay. What's the dude? Rupert Murdoch, owner
Rupert Murdoch.
of
Fox News and all
Fox
that.
News.
Right, yeah.
Jerry Jones.
Jeff Bezos, if you were mentioning people.
No.
You want that?
Hey, what
Donald
Jerry Jones-
Trump.
Hold up, what Jerry Jones he talking
Donald
about? What you
Trump
bring up
kids.
Jerry Jones for?
Because here's where I'm going. We
I
ain't getting
ain't
into
getting
it. It
no-
ain't
no,
football
hey,
season.
listen.
I ain't got to burn you up.
Oh,
yet.
man.
But here's the thing.
He bring up Jerry Jones for?
But here's the thing, though, right?
Trying to be
all
sliding
three
in
of
there.
these,
Trying to be
all
slick.
three of these guys, we know they in their 80s. They got grown ass kids, like kids that are in almost 60 years old. They got sons that are 60 years old.
Built
You think
legacy.
they still getting fathering from their fathers who are that old and getting bags like that? And so this is where I'm going with it. Probably one of the greatest losses that our community has seen in the last 2 generations is the loss of the black grandfather. And even to this day, we got guys who are our age who are dropping like flies. And the perception is that, if I can just get my kid, if I can be around till my kid gets into their 20s, then they'll be good. But think about how much game they lose. And then the other part is as you get older, like right now where we are, we've become some of the wisest people that we've been in our entire life. We can see game 4 steps ahead.
We're not cutting them off, though. We're not cutting them off. I don't think any of us meant that, right?
Yeah.
Even if we come up with the age, we say, no, that's why I said we become advisors. And that advisor thing becomes a full-time job.
Yeah.
But I
You know,
agree- I
we
agree with
checking, we're not waiting on them to check in. We checking in on them, especially like Thaxton, you go away to school.
Yeah.
Man, you cleaning the room up like we taught you, man.
Yeah,
You doing what you was
Little
supposed to do.
things.
You doing your part, taking that trash out.
Yeah.
Shit like that. You know,
Yeah.
we know we're not doing the cutoff.
But I'm just looking at it like, how many grandfathers do you see in the black community? Say a 20-year-old. How
Yeah.
many?
You don't.
You get what I'm saying?
It's like, and
we
it's
don't
like,
have it.
okay,
It's tough.
so you might see the grandfather sitting on the porch. That's somebody's grandfather.
Like
you know,
we were young.
Them old school
them
grandfathers.
old
like
school
we were young.
grandfathers, you know.
we be sitting by the poolside, me and my
I
grandson.
think it is a difference if we do have grandfathers, they more serious. You know, some of the grandmothers now they still partying with the kids. You know what I'm saying? So it's like that's important and that's something to think about.
So just finishing out this part right here, the average life expectancy of black or African American males is around 69 years. So black men, I'm begging you to figure out a way to take care of your health, to expand that so that you can give your children and your family a little bit more. But we're gonna bend right now because we got a special part right here. This is Father's Day edition. So we got somebody who wants to give a shout out to to somebody special here. So
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Happy Father's Day, Dad. I want you to know I'm thankful for everything you've done for me. Always showing up, showing love, and coming through when I need you the most. Always staying on top of me with school, giving 110% with anything I wanted to do, and showing me how to be a man. I love you, Dad.
Oh,
That's
man.
thorough. That's
How y'all gonna do
thorough.
this?
That's tough.
I love
Hey,
it.
that's,
Yes,
that's
sir.
a beautiful
Yeah,
father.
that's
Yes,
there,
man. That's
brother.
blessed. That's
Gracious.
blessed.
Yeah. So again, this is our first, our first run for Father's Day, right?
Right.
And I think we've covered a lot of great ground.
Yeah.
Anything y'all have last things y'all want to say to the fathers out there?
I just want to tell the brothers and fathers out there to just keep on striving, stay thorough, because I think all of us are doing a good job. Sometimes we don't get the credit for it, but we here to show you that you are loved, man. We trying to spread the love to you.
Yeah.
Be encouraged. You know what I mean? Be encouraged. Stay strong mentally and physically. And that component, that health component, is very serious. We need to eat better, live better. You know what I mean? Be able to focus and hold ourselves accountable and hold our kids accountable, not just our personal kids.
Yeah.
Not just our biological kids.
Village.
Let's bring that village concept back. And it's nothing. Nobody's stopping us from doing that.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, happy Father's Day, fellas. And to my son, who's now father, happy Father's Day, son. You're doing a great job.
There you
Yeah.
go. It's tough.
All right. Yeah. And I say the same thing. I just want to kind of give a shout out to all of the fathers, in particular from our area, from the D.C. area. Keep it thorough. I know that there are a lot of us who understand that we didn't get all of the fathering that we needed, right? And we have a right to be angry because of that. But the thing with anger is like drinking the poison, expecting another person to die. So, the fact is, find a way to process that. Group up. If you got a good dude who's around you, who you need in regards to support around being a father, group up. There are other resources out there, mental health resources. Look out for them. But, that's it for fathers, y'all.
And to everybody out there who's even on the riff with their father, make sure you call them and wish them a happy Father's Day, regardless.
Forgive them.
Hey, forgiveness is everything. I personally can let you know that was them last few days I did have with my father after 40 years. I mean, it was a beautiful thing. I felt so lifted, and now I can just have good memories, you know what I mean, of the times we did spend together.
Yeah. Haru, you got any last thing to say? He say stay thorough, y'all.
That's right. Stay thorough.